so that you weren't aware of how far behind you were. So Twitter came along and basically allowed us, through what John referred to as asynchronous follows, allowed us to be able to model an architecture that looked at the information base and be able to assign a certain amount of relevance and ranking according to the people that we think are important. And I'll come back to that in a second. So Twitter disintermediated the link by establishing a parallel metadata stream, the social cloud. In other words, instead of it just being about the content, it was also about people's attitude about the content and how that was expressed through links, citations, whatever. And social gestures then became the new lingua franca. And we've seen last week in San Francisco, we've seen how Facebook has jumped on that big time. So social gestures, likes. Evidently, we've now been borged by Facebook. Retweets, that was Twitter's attempt, and largely driven by users, but then co-opted by Twitter to try and establish that metadata outside of the 140 character limit, which I think personally is a mistake. And then there was this thing called track, which Twitter had for a few weeks. I'm a nut about track, and I'll attempt to explain it, but it doesn't really matter whether you agree with me or not. And then conversation, which is most embodied by friend feed, which has been absorbed by Facebook, and potentially by some of the new features of Facebook in terms of a real-time access to the APIs. And then famously, I don't know what happened to Google Wave, but there is that kind of real-time conversation thing. So unfortunately, it's hard to like Hitler. You can't like a post. Maybe somebody wrote a post about a book on the Holocaust. Do you like that? There's an impedance mismatch there. Retweeting is a validation, not a contribution. It's not a original source. It's not your voice. It's you basically marketing the fact that you like something. It's about you as a brand. Track is not officially sanctioned. It's not allowed. It's been, cordoned off by Twitter, sold to Microsoft and Google without apparent licensing of track capabilities. And conversations are public for the most part and more marketing than substance. So much for gestures. Filtering does not overcome the flattening of stream objects. I'm talking here in hieroglyphics, mostly because I'm trying to figure this out myself. So please bear with me. If you understand that, let me know, because I'm not sure what I'm saying here. What it does do is prepare the soil for the next wave of value. What we're seeing here is the next wave of value. Kynetx is at the forefront of the exploration of the next wave of value. Right? And then finally, once we distill the stream to a usable multiplexing or stream splicing, we can harness social cloud dynamics. So what are social cloud dynamics? Who I follow, who they follow, they being who I follow. So this cloud, and then each of those nodes, their cloud. And who, this is a really important one, who we don't follow, who we're not interested in, how do we derive the signals? This is what the like Hitler thinks about. How do you have a dislike button? There have been some attempts in that space, but how do you mine implicit negative gestures, rejection of information, particularly by the people that you're interested in. That's very high value to me. My mother used to have a boyfriend who was the film critic for the New York Post, Archer Winston. And Archer's style was to never say anything negative about anybody or any film. So he would say things like, if you're really stupid and a lunatic, you'll love this movie. So that's a kind of an approximation of a negative gesture. Track discovery. The whole purpose for track, in my opinion, is to allow for the possibility of opening a channel. It's kind of like, I'm dating myself, obviously, but The Man from U.N.C.L.E., where they flip open the open channel D. Track is a way of opening a connection unknown to you, and perhaps to the person that's trying to reach you, to anybody on the planet in real time. That's an incredibly powerful thing. That is the reason, in my opinion, that Twitter exploded, and nobody has gotten back to that yet for various political reasons, I think. But the ability to combine this follow architecture with the unknowable, with the what Tim O'Reilly calls the unintended consequences, is the magic that this platform suggests. And then affinity discovery. Once you realize that you're part, the affinity groups already exist. We are all part of a number of affinity groups that some of them we're aware of because we joined a club. We have a certain number of people that we've modeled in Facebook or in FriendFeed or whatever. But far more pervasive are the affinity groups that exist that we're not aware of except implicitly. And once these affinities, the people who are in these affinities start to discover that, mostly through the communication model of track, big things start to happen. I probably just said this again here. Once affinity is discovered, conditions are ripe for a next generation of media. This is what I'm doing at Salesforce. We're basically going to try and rebuild media around this notion that our credibility is not tied to our brand or the companies we work for. It's direct one-on-one communication with whoever is listening or communicating with you. People are smart enough to make up their own minds about who's credible and who isn't. And I think that has enormous implications for the media. The social gestures define a communication model that helps cement innovation as the most pleasurable outcome of collaboration. I forget who, I was talking to Ray Ozzie about a year ago, and I asked him, we were talking about collaboration. He had sort of brought it up because, he invented notes, and he's been at the forefront of collaborative technologies for 40 years. And I said to him, people really don't like to collaborate, do they? And he said, no, they don't. So if we can find a pleasurable, soft center in the middle of the collaborative experience, that's something that's a really big deal. And that's the big toe of the elephant's foot, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know quite how this is going to bake out, but the reason that I say that the iPad is important is because it's part of what's going to make that pleasurable. Once we are reinforced in looking into the affinity for contributions, we are more likely to respect each other's time. The biggest problem that I see in the media right now is that there's absolutely no respect for time. It's a bunch of potato chips being, force-fed down our throats, mostly because we think there's something there, and all we ever get is a stomachache out of this. So it's important for us to be able to, in order for